Today we're looking at I am the vine, one of the well-known statements from the Gospel of John attributed to Jesus. The mind is a very interesting thing. We are actually designed to live with a conscious awareness of our Creator. And by Creator, I'm talking present tense, that which is creating and sustaining us now. We are set up to know that, to know firsthand what that process is, and to the point where we live in peace all the time, because this is indestructible. This level of being is indestructible, and as we touch that and know that, we develop that consciousness. But we also know that the imagination is a pretty wild thing. One of my Facebook friends posted a cartoon of two birds sitting on a branch, and one of them chirped. And the one sitting next to him said, "Oh great, now I'm stuck with that song in my head all day." You ever had that happen? It's like, so who's in charge? You know, we have this incredible faculty of imagination, but it's usually running off someplace, and it doesn't take a whole lot to trigger it. And part of that probably is culturally based. We've never really been trained to understand the importance of the imagination and how it can run away with us, and it can have a whole experience. It can make us feel like we're having an experience that we're not really having. We're having it in the imagination. We fear things that are not present and maybe never will be present. And we, run through all kinds of scenarios that may never develop. That's the coward dies 1,000 deaths kind of thinking. It's an imaginary thing. We blow things out of proportion, and we go through, all kinds of scenarios that just may never materialize. So we've got that going on, and part of our spiritual disciplines, part of our spiritual practice is to acknowledge these things and understand how to bring them into this now moment, how to bring them more into control. And I'm not talking about controlling our every single thought, but the awareness that we have, like, when you're envisioning something that could happen in your life, maybe you could stop that, or just stop and think, is this a real thing? Is this happening, or is it a projection? If it is something I can work with and do something about, what would that be right now? What can I do right now? What action can I take? In other words, that would be a logical approach to a very illogical reaction that we're having, a very illogical use of the imagination. But it is a starting point. There's nothing wrong with any of the faculties that we have. They're all working perfectly well. They may not be pointed in the most positive direction. But one of the genius aspects of Jesus to me is he did the chirp. When he gives a parable, he's giving an idea. He's putting out a song that I think, hopes will play through your mind. And it's usually some vivid imagery, some very simple imagery that would probably leave his listeners, as it does us, with something to hold on to, a picture to hold on to that is more than an abstract spiritual concept. And so this is one of them, and we don't know how much is Jesus and how much is John. It doesn't really matter. I think probably the imagery, I could imagine, comes from Jesus, and John used it in his own way, making Jesus the vine, rather than what he's talking about at a deeper spiritual level, and we'll get into that. But he says, "Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. So the traditional interpretation of this is Jesus is talking about himself. Come to me, you've got to come to me. But I have a feeling that Jesus himself, the mystic, was talking about something else, something deeper than that. Because I can't go to Jesus. You can't go to Jesus. The church, the traditional church will say, yes, you can. You come to church, you read your Bible, you come to Jesus. Have you ever had a come to Jesus moment? That's a kind of a traditional thing, but what's that mean? We're not physically coming to Jesus. It means we're coming clean. We're becoming honest about something. And that's, but the physical man is not part of that. To come to Jesus now means that we're coming to a way of thought. Jesus as Savior, he died for our sins, and if we trust that, if we go back to that, that will be okay, no matter what happens. It's referring to the personality, the man, and his connection with God, the Son of God, Jesus the Son of God. But Jesus, I don't think, was referring to himself. He actually deflected people's attention away from his personal self on a number of occasions. The vine is something beyond Jesus. It's something that we all have access to. With this simple metaphor, Jesus illustrates the relationship every person has with his or her spiritual source. God, our Creator, Sustainer, is like the vine from which we grow. To abide in God is to live with the awareness of God as the source of our being. The vine is the spiritual dimension of each one of us. You can call it your Christ self if you want to use the Christian terms, the religious terms. You can call it your true self. You can call it your soul. Call it your I am. Call it whatever feels best to you. But it's that part that has risen from the universal presence of God that I refer to as the creative life force, and has now individualized and expressed as you, and you then express yourself in this world. God expands through individualization, just like you do, just like I do. You get an idea, and that idea becomes a set of plans. It becomes a projection. The mind grows. The energy grows around that idea. When you get an inspirational idea, it becomes probably a condition in your life because you pursue that. But it starts with an idea, one thing, and it expands, and that's how God operates. Only we see the thoughts of God as living creatures and planets and stars and galaxies and all kinds of interesting things. It's one life expressing in countless ways, multitude of ways. So that's how God expands, through the physical aspect of creation. And we have that same ability. So we have a mind that is able to come up with an idea, and from that idea it begins to expand into course of action or whatever. But there's two things to think about. And this kind of just has come to me this last week, and I wish I had included it in my book, The Complete Soul. But so I may do like a study guide or something to go along with that. But the difference between resources and faculties, and this is kind of a technical thing. Some of metaphysical language is technical, and it's not really emotional. We don't, it doesn't move us, but it gives us something to think about, a way to logically approach something. Our resources are life, love, power, and intelligence. This is the vine. When I say the creative life force, God is life, love, power, and intelligence. These are the elements. We speak of what is the nature of God. God is life. God is love. God is power. God is intelligence. And that which God is projects as the individual soul. And so that would mean we are created in the image and after the likeness of God. We too are life, love, power, and intelligence. So that's our resource. These are our resources. They never change. They never go away. When we think of a resource, we think of something that allows us to advance, allows us to succeed, allows us to adapt, allows us to do whatever we need to do. And all of these things do. Life is the energy of our being. Love is that which draws to us that which is for our highest good and dissolves that which is not. Power moves through every cell of our being. We're empowered to live and move and have our being in life and on this planet, to interact. And intelligence allows us to interact with our environment, with our physical environment. But we never lack any of these things. These are resources. Our faculties are imagination, faith, will, judgment, and elimination. The simplest way to distinguish between faculties and resources is to say that we use our faculties to direct our resources. So we all have life. How are we directing that? How are we using our faculties to direct that? How are we using our imagination? How are we using our faith? Where is our faith pointed? How do we exercise our will? How are we using our judgment? Are we judging righteously according to what we are as spiritual beings, or are we judging according to just the physical aspect of ourselves and of life? And what about elimination? What are we holding on to that needs to be let go? How are we using our faculties? We have the same amount of life, love, power, and intelligence. And just think of this kind of as a palette of paint. And let's just say 4 colors of paint. We can paint any picture we want. How are we exercising our faculties to come up with the painting that we come up with? So Jesus is saying you have these resources, the vine, that's the vine. Life, love, power, and intelligence doesn't go away. It's always there. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about the same thing that's in him is in you and I. And we can call it the soul. We can call it whatever we want to call it. But these things don't change ever. Our access to them does not change. What changes is how we direct them, how we use our faculties. And primarily, imagination and faith, I think, are the 2 most important. They're all important, but they are, we just illustrated how easy it is for the imagination to get locked into a song that we can't get out of our head. If we can't master that one, then what about that person that's doing something we don't agree with that may seem harmful to us? How do we handle that? Usually our imagination goes into the worst case scenarios, and we create a situation that's not too good for anybody. So let me just read this again. Our resources are life, love, power, and intelligence, that is the vine. Our faculties are imagination, faith, will, judgment, and elimination. The simplest way to distinguish between faculties and resources is to say we use our faculties to direct our resources. I call them executive faculties because we execute how we use them. We're the ones that make the choice. And nobody forces us to do that. We do it out of our past experience, out of the consciousness that we built up. We use them according, and that's what has to be retrained. That's what we're working at retraining, how to use our faculties. That's really what the spiritual thing's about. First of all, recognize that you are a soul that is absolutely perfect and changeless. What are you doing with that? What am I doing with that? That's what we ask ourselves. Really, the whole spiritual thing is in the area of faculties, how we're using them. And we'll get to that here. Because we often draw our identity from spiritual sources, job, family, social level, etc., we may feel overwhelmed when challenges sweep through our lives. These words of John remind us to pause and to reconnect to our source. In the 7th verse, Jesus makes this promise: "If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you will, and it shall be done for you." Again, he is not referring to himself, because you and I can't really ask Jesus for anything. We can imagine we're asking him for something, and that's what we're taught to do, basically. Pray in faith. Jesus will respond. But Jesus is saying you've got a comforter, you've got an advocate, you've got something with you that if I go away, it'll still be there. And that's the vine. That's the resources. That's that underlying reality that each of us are. You know, I think he was pretty clear about that to his disciples. I have to go away so you'll stop looking at me. But when I go away, I will send an advocate, a comforter, that will teach you all things, that will make clear or bring to remembrance all that I've said. And that's perfectly logical. He was a teacher that was putting ideas out. And we don't always connect that in real life. You know, we may love something that we've heard, but we don't know how to bring it into our experience. We don't know how to connect. It just goes out the window when something comes up. The teaching that that moved us one moment is gone. It goes out one ear and out the other, as we'd say. So he's trying to ground his listeners in through parable, through making statements like this. And John probably dilutes that and makes us think Jesus is talking about himself. But he's not. He has not left us with anything. And that'll be a horrible statement to some. They'll think it is. He came to show us what's already here and what can never leave us. That's what a spiritual teacher does. It's like, you know, there's gravity at work right now, and I'm here to point out how that works. Or there's air, and you breathe it. It's always here. You don't need me to do that. You know, that's, to me, what his attitude would be. That would be the attitude, I think, of any spiritual teacher. They know they don't have the power to awaken any individual to what is true of them at the spiritual level, at the deepest level. But they have the ability to give parables or say things in ways that help people make that connection. And it may be that somebody will hear something for a long, long time, and one day they get it. One day they understand what that means. I've had that happen. I know you have too. We all have. It's like you think you get it, but you don't. You don't really get it. You get it in your head, but it hasn't become something real to you. And that was the dilemma with Jesus, and it's always the dilemma. That's why I think we have put Jesus in a place that is not humanly possible to accomplish, because we didn't get what he said. We're not getting what he said. And then we get 4 gospel writers that probably didn't get what he said, and they give us their interpretation of what he said. And we have something that has nothing to do probably with Jesus, and in many cases has nothing to do with the mystical thread at all. It has to do with the personality of Jesus. Unity's been accused of being a cult, and a cult is defined by personality worship. It's followers of a person, of a personality. And I can't think of a better example of that than traditional Christianity. We're looking at a personality of Jesus. And unity has been exactly the opposite. We'd say that Jesus spoke of the Christ. He demonstrated the Christ, which means that spiritual dimension, that set of resources that we all have. He demonstrated an understanding of that to the point where he could teach it. But he never pointed to himself and said, follow me personally. Follow what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Any spiritual teacher will say that. When you read somebody's book, they're saying, follow this line of logic. Take a look at this. See what it means to you. See if you can get something out of it. That's the job of a teacher. So how do we abide in God? It's through the twofold process of prayer. First, through denial, which is release, and that's the ability to let go. That's one of our faculties. First, through denial, release, we let go of the negative energy that appears to stir in us. Let go of your emotional attachments, your fears, your anger, to that which you do not want. Speak words like this: I now release all emotions of fear and doubt. And see, it really is that simple. And these are words, this is an instruction. It's the practice, of course, that does it. If you've got something going on right now in your life, this is where the rubber meets the road. You look at this thing, and how are you dealing with this? Do you have is your stomach in knots? Can you begin to let go to the point where your body relaxes with it, where you can see beyond that worst case scenario that you've imagined? That's the first side of prayer, is letting go. And there's a difference between letting go and pretending it's not there. You see, there's that level of denial. That's not what we're talking about. We've got this problem here, and what we're looking at is not the problem, but our reaction to it, how we're handling it, what we're doing with it, how we are employing our faculties. How are we using our imagination? How are we using our faith? Are we holding on to this thing, or are we letting go? Are we exercising our elimination? So prayer is a conscious activity, a conscious effort to see how we're using our faculties and to use them in a way that works for us rather than against us. So if we speak simple words like this: I now release all emotions of fear and doubt. If you just sit down and do that for a few moments, release all emotions of fear and doubt, whatever the problem is, just to practice doing that. But that's just the first step. Next, move into the affirmative side of the prayer process by affirming, God is my source. God is my strength. My life is now unfolding in divine order. Again, these are more than words. It's a movement. This is abiding in the vine. Do you really understand when you're saying this? When you're saying God is my source, you're saying, I have all the life, love, power, and intelligence that I need to deal with this situation. Usually when we're dealing with something we don't know how to deal with, we're saying exactly the opposite. I don't have enough of any of these things to get through them. But to abide in the vine is to acknowledge I have all of these resources. They're all here. They're present right now. And so that's what affirmation is. God is my source. That is, these four elements can never be depleted. God is my strength. My life is now unfolding in divine order. And that statement is also a letting go. It's a sense of flowing. That, okay, here's all these things going on, and just imagine yourself sort of like a river that's going around all the barriers. No problem at all. Just flowing right around whatever rocks and trees or whatever might be in the way. That these things are not barriers. Usually our imagination will lock onto that tree and say, I can't get around that. I don't know how to do that. And we'll lock on it, we'll back the whole river up, to deal with that situation. But even a river, when it gets dammed up, log jam, icebergs, whatever, eventually it breaks. And there's something that knows how to flow through, how to get through. And that's what it is. It's not, I'm depending on my own power, my own intelligence, although it is your own, but not in the sense that we normally think. Like I have just so much that I can do. Think of it as the resources that you have. That's what's doing the work. Abide in the vine. That's what it's about. Remember. It's a remembrance, recollection. Coming back to that one presence and one power. Okay, so allow yourself to experience the lightness of letting go and the infilling of assurance that your life is unfolding perfectly, according to the divine blueprint that is being imparted from within your being. That's the vine. And see, that's what sticks in your mind with Jesus' illustration. You know what a vine is. You know what a grapevine is. You've seen the grapes emerge from that, the branches and then the grapes, the fruit, in other words. And the fruit is what he's talking about. That's your life. That's how the best level of your life is expressed from within you. It's a process, and if we interrupt that process, then the grapes don't show up. We have a bad harvest that year or that moment. So allow yourself to experience the lightness of letting go and the infilling of assurance that your life is unfolding perfectly, according to the divine blueprint that is being imparted from within your being. In the same way the fruit of the vine manifests from within the branch, so a spiritually ordered life manifests through your inner being and through every facet of your life. Abide often in the awareness of God as your source. Then ask whatsoever you will, and it shall be done for you. And what we are normally asking for is peace of mind. I've kind of come to that conclusion. That's usually the bottom line of any problem we have. We're trying to get to that place where we can once again have peace of mind. And that is the solution. And as I've said many times, there's always going to be something boiling out there, something bubbling up, some tree or rock in our way. So what if we can look at that obstacle, that apparent obstacle, and maintain peace of mind? That's really the bottom line. That's what we're after. Can we achieve that under any circumstance? I think we can. I've proven to myself I can achieve it under circumstances I didn't think I could. So if you prove it to yourself, then you'll do it again and again and keep working on that. All right? Thank you for coming out, and be sure to come out and hear Erica next week. She'll appreciate your support. I think you'll really like her. And
my life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Although the tempest loudly roars, I hear the truth it liveth. And though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? No storm
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.